Hello, I'm Dr. Kelly Monahan with the Upwork Research Institute, and I am so excited today to be joined by Molly Sands, and I'm going to let her introduce herself in a minute. But we recently ran a poll on LinkedIn, and it became very clear that there's two friction points as we talk about meetings today. First, there is still way too many meetings going on, and I can't wait to unpack this with Molly because my hypothesis is that we weren't really great at driving effective meetings in person. And now that there's many teams working in a distributed manner, some of those bad practices have followed us in and maybe have even become amplified in a distributed work environment. And then the second thing is that people responded in our poll, and this is over almost 100 people, said that they were attending too many meetings that were also poorly run. And so, what I'm really excited to do today is really begin to get practical as we think about the future of work and begin to understand, from Molly's perspective and all the great research that she's done, how do we stop attending meetings and how do we empower ourselves to say no? And then, second, if you're a leader and you're running a lot of these meetings, how do we just get better at running meetings today? So, Molly, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself to the LinkedIn community. You've done so much great research in your background, and obviously now you're at Atlassian. So, I'd love just to get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, awesome. Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Molly Sands. I lead the Team Anywhere Lab at Atlassian, and my team focuses on designing best practices for distributed teams. And when I say distributed, I just mean anyone that is doing a lot of their work online and collaborating some of the time with people in other locations. So if you send emails at night from home sometimes, you're doing distributed work. If you work with people in other offices or across the globe, those are all distributed work situations. And so we are really thinking about how can we use behavioral science and psychology to understand the ways people interact at work and make those a lot better so that teams can reach their full potential.
Oh, I love that. So I'm really curious. I know you just recently released a research study, and make sure I got the facts here right, that I think it was 73% of meetings are ineffective. How, like, can you just tell us a little bit more? Like, I love talking to researchers. Like, how did you get on this topic? And then we'll talk through maybe some of the key insights and findings you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Atlassian, we make collaboration software. So we make tools like Jira, Trello, Confluence, lots of things so that teams can work better together. And because of that, my team is always really focused on what we can learn about how people are working together and what's working for them, what's not working for them, what teams are really trying new innovative things, and what can we learn about that to scale across both Atlassian, but also for all of our customers. And so this topic of meetings endlessly comes up. And, to your point, meetings are not a thing that broke recently. Meetings are a thing that have been a huge pain point for a long, long time. For folks that work in offices all the time, we're used to. All the meetings weren't great then either. But it's really been this thing that's been so pervasive as a problem. So what we decided to do was survey 5,000 knowledge workers from across
Okay.
4 different continents and ask them about what is happening with meetings today. Which ones work? Which ones don't? Why are they using them? What are the challenges? What are the things they've done that have made meetings better? And to get that full picture of where are we at with this right now.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I just love the scope that you have, and I think we share the same thing in terms of this wasn't really great in person to begin with, and so how do we make this better in a distributed environment? So I'd love to know. I mean, there's been so much talk, in the headlines around productivity concerns from leaders and this need to drive people back to all be together in person to have this creativity and innovation occur. My hunch is that in a globalized talent environment, if we can figure out how to actually run effective distributed meetings, in-person time absolutely matters, and those moments that matter are critical to get right. But what I'd love to learn from you and what you found in your research from those 5,000 knowledge workers is, what did you learn about meetings and maybe specifically around distributed work meetings? What are some of the top, 2 to 3 insights that you found?
Yeah. So one thing that's really interesting in this work is that we surveyed people in all different types of work situations,
Okay.
and we didn't find big discrepancies between the people that were working in distributed teams and people that spent most of their time in the office, though we do find that most people in offices all the time are still working with people in other locations. So
Oh,
they're doing a lot of
interesting.
virtual. Yeah, it's fairly rare that people are not working in a way where they virtually collaborate right now. especially in larger enterprises or bigger businesses. You just naturally have people more spread out. But across the board, we found that meetings are the number one thing preventing progress. So 78% of people said it's really hard to get their work done because they're expected to attend so many meetings. And
Wow.
which is huge. It's most
Yeah.
everyone is saying, I cannot get the most important things that I need to do every day done because I'm stuck in all these meetings.
Yes.
And I'm sure we've all had that experience. I've had some very meeting heavy experiences myself. Like, it's certainly frustrating when you're just feel trapped in like, how do I get out of this? I need to go to all these things. It's important for visibility. That's a thing that's valued at my company. We hear that a lot too, that people feel like they can't not go. But we also saw that half of people are working overtime at least a few days a week or working in the evenings to
Oh,
finish tasks and to finish that high priority work. And when we looked at director level and above, that number rose to 67%. And this is a few days a week.
that's incredible. Like, this is what drives me crazy. And I'm like, we actually have quite a few people who've joined us live on LinkedIn. So I just want to do a quick poll live right now to understand those of you who are joining us live. How many meetings a day are you attending? And I think, Molly, I think one of my things that I struggle with as knowledge workers, we know our work is interdependent. Like, we need each other to get the work done. One of my biggest problems I have is we attend meetings and none of the work is actually getting done. Like, we just do updates. And I know that human connection is a critical part of us coming together, but I'd love to know if you had any insights from your research in particular, and maybe just even your own leadership experiences. Is meetings a place for the work to get done? Like, is it appropriate that we're spending maybe 6 to 7 hours during the typical workday, and then all these people are logging in late at night to finish the work? Like, what is the purpose of the meeting then? Like, if we're not actually doing the work?
Yeah, so this is really where I think we need to redesign collaboration, and we've done a
Oh,
ton of
okay.
research in this space. So, with most meetings, I mean, meetings are just an overused tool, right? People are
Okay.
using them for all sorts of purposes. And so we see a lot when we ask people about different goals that meetings in this research, we found that's always what they were using as their first approach. So whether it's relationship
Hmm.
building or sharing the status of projects or work or making a decision or brainstorming, they're always jumping to meetings first. But then 65 to 80% of the time, they say that those meetings are not accomplishing that core goal.
Jeez.
And I think one of the problems though, like, right, people have good intent when they schedule the meetings. I don't think anyone is like, I want everyone here not working all day. Nobody is thinking that, but not enough people really know how to run great meetings. And we've done some work around that. And I think a lot of people don't have the right asynchronous practices or know
Mhm.
how to share information without relying too heavily on meetings.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like, I'm dying to know, like, what are some of the best practices? Like, how do you run an effective meeting? Like,
Yeah,
and I'm sure it differs whether you're running a one-on-one or team, but like, is there any generalized best practices when it comes to just running better meetings today?
yeah. So we've experimented with this at Atlassian, and one of the things that we do here is something we call page-led meetings, where
Yeah.
we it's really interesting practice where we write a page in advance. So we have a document with all the key information. We've created a lot of ways to train people to write really well because that's super important for
Yes.
communicating without tons and tons of meetings. I'm a huge fan personally of the Axios Smart Brevity style. We use that a lot. They have a book about it. They do trainings. There's like a lot of really great resources on Smart Brevity. So I would highly recommend checking that out if you're working to become a more effective written communicator. But we did this experiment where we asked Atlassians to do these page-led meetings. And what they did was wrote a really targeted, quick document. So 3 minutes or less for the read time on average. That's what they ended up with. And it really gets to the point of, hey, here are the key issues. And this is super effective when you're trying to make a decision
Mhm.
or anytime that you want to get more alignment. So when you have those moments where you're not sure if everyone is on the same page, we actually use a page to get them there. And we bring everyone to the meeting. We don't do pre-reads. No one has time for them because they're in lots of
Right.
meetings. You don't know if people did that. We've all been in that where you're like,
Oh,
yeah, no, I
yes.
saw it. And you're like frantically reading before not listening to what's happening. So we just give people time in the meeting to read the page. You read through, people leave comments. And when the pages are really well written, this leaves almost all of that time for collaborative discussion and problem solving. And sometimes we have these meetings and people read it and we talk for 3 minutes and we're like, hey, we're all on the same page. Go ahead and do the thing. And then the whole meeting
Yep.
takes 7 minutes and you're back to your day. There's other times where this uncovers that people aren't aligned, right? And we actually do need to dive into different areas or get more information, and we have really productive discussions. But when we tested that method against a more traditional meeting where someone might have an agenda or
Yep.
not, not, but we found that it was a 30% more energizing experience for people. So they actually felt really motivated by those collaboration moments. We found that it was 23% less frustrating. So it wasn't that sense of like, what am I doing here? Should I be somewhere else? I need to make progress on something. And they were much more likely to accomplish the goal of the meeting. And we found this out by surveying the people that attended. So it's a pretty robust way to see, did you really get to the outcome that you wanted?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for like just sharing that applied research. For those who may not be trained in social science research, I mean, being able to do a real world experiment, I think, is a holy grail of any sort of even academic finding. So I think, that approach you just took is one, just from an academic perspective, really solid and hopeful to show that there is a pathway for us to maybe start thinking about meetings differently that actually lead to less frustration, increased energy. Because I mean, I kind of said this, in a joke format the other day on LinkedIn, but like, when is the last time you went to some sort of Zoom meeting and felt so energized as a result of it? It's just, we all hear about that Zoom fatigue. So I'm curious, I think you're onto something here that honestly, I haven't really thought about as deeply as I should have in my own research and work, which is the goal of the meeting. And I think you're right. The other word that you use and phrase you use today that I think is going to be helpful for those listening is a meeting is a tool. It's simply a tool and you have other tools. So from your perspective, and again, I'm not sure you have the research on this, what should be the goal of an in-person meeting? And how is that different maybe than a goal of the day-to-day distributed work, getting work done on a project update, maybe as two different things to compare and contrast?
Yeah, so I think about a couple of rules for when I should have a meeting. If
Okay.
I'm just sharing information, it does not need to be a meeting. If I'm going to talk the vast majority of the time, it shouldn't be a meeting. There's a lot
Okay.
of great ways that I can get that information to people. I can write it down. Writing also really helps sharpen our thinking and get us clearer on what we're trying to say. So it takes less time for other people to consume, but also tends to be higher quality. We also use a tool called Loom, which I should say Atlassian owns Loom. They joined us earlier this year, but it's an amazing asynchronous video collaboration tool.
Oh,
And
cool.
it's really great. You can record a video. You feel like you're trying to be a TikTok star the first time you do it. And it's totally, I was like, this is not my normal day to
Yeah.
day. I feel too much like an influencer, a fake influencer. But really, like once you get over that hurdle of doing it
Okay.
once, immediately everyone loves it and is so happy to like have this great content. But it's a really cool way that you can record videos and share them with your team, and then the team can react or respond within the videos. So like if you'd watch me talking about, hey, our top priorities this week are XYZ, and people could like thumbs up or put a heart or thumbs down if they don't like the priorities,
Sure.
and add comments. So you could say, hey, I know you're saying this matters, but like I thought it was this. Can you clarify? All that kind of stuff happens, but it lets everyone consume it on their own time. So especially in a distributed team, the team I lead is spread between New York and Sydney, Australia. So we don't have a
Get the
lot
whole
of
globe.
hours. Really global.
Covered.
Really, really global. But if it's something where I'm just telling them things, give them a chance to consume it when it makes the most sense for their workday. That gives them longer blocks to be more creative and to do like the real work, and they can kind of consolidate, okay, here's when I'm going to catch up on this stuff, and it's not as disruptive to everyone's schedule.
I love that example because I mean, here's the other thing, like I get so frustrated sometimes that we're still like in this whole like RTO conversation and debate. And, when I was at Deloitte in 2017, we were writing and talking about like the need to start to globalize talent models and at the time work with alternative talent and freelancers. It's just a way to build more agility into your business and ultimately more innovation. And we just, we seem to take a step forward and then maybe a couple steps back in a lot of the practices and practicality. But I think, my hunch has always been that we have to change our behavior and how we operate and lead in distributed environment. And I haven't seen that. Like that example you just gave is a true behavior change. Like I also monitor all this pressure all the time to like do these more TikTok style videos. That's just not really my natural organic style either. But like being able to do that in a way, to your point, like get over that human behavior change. Because if that's the way, like I can think about even connecting deeper with my colleagues as opposed to showing up on a video, with maybe 30, 40 other people. Half of us are off video, half of us are probably multitasking, doing something else. Or if I was getting some of these video messages and being able to work that way async, that's like a true unlock, I think, in a different way than how we've worked previously. So, how do you think about the one obstacle I hear time and time again from the C suite in particular is, when we're doing distributed work meetings, it doesn't feel connected. Like, are people actually paying attention? And especially as I think through all hands type meetings or when you're really bringing together your critical mass, how do you think about running those meetings differently in a distributed environment?
Yeah. So I hear this a lot too, right? That we're not
Yeah.
connecting. And in the
Yes.
research that we've done, we've asked people about when they feel most connected to their colleagues, and we find that they're about 3 times as likely to feel connected by solving a hard problem
Yes.
versus spending a lot of time together in virtual calls. And I think a lot of that has to do with what work is the right thing to do in either in person or in a virtual room. And really when everyone in that room has an important role to play and a
Okay.
way to contribute. So this is one of the things I also love about having pages or whiteboards or ways that people can contribute without dominating the conversation
Yeah.
out loud. That was actually another interesting thing in some of the research we were talking about earlier, that about half of people complain that there's just a few people that talk in those meetings, even when it's supposed to be a collaborative session.
Yes, and I have to say it's probably a certain demographic too, is probably monopolizing a lot of those meetings. I think that's where we get into a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion issues with meetings is we have people there on Zoom boxes and we feel like, well, we're all equal now because we're the same size. But in reality, it's whoever's dominating the conversation is still the one in power and control of that meeting.
Yeah, certainly. And so definitely having any time that I'm hosting any type of meeting, I want to make sure that people have an active role to play and that
Mm,
there is a way for everyone to contribute, or there's multiple ways for everyone to
yeah.
contribute. I mean, even if you're just using the chat in Google Meet or in Zoom, right? Like
Hmm.
that's a great way. The reactions, that kind of stuff, like you can start to signal more.
Yes.
But I think that having more ways for people to brainstorm together, also doing more, um, there can more asynchronous creativity. There's a lot of value in having time to think about things, to come up with those
Yes.
good ideas. So you don't have to come up with all the ideas in 5 minutes live, right? That's not the way that everyone works and thinks best. It's not the way most people work and think
Yeah.
best. And
Yeah.
so I think
Totally.
that makes a lot of sense. But you'd also asked about those, those all hands or those moments where
Yeah.
people are really coming together. We do some of that asynchronously still. So we
Interesting.
but given how global my team is and our broader company is, it's not always feasible to have everyone watch something at the same time. Lots of people are sleeping. So sometimes those things will be communicated in that way. Loom again is really great. We'll have a written transcript of everything as well. I think AI has made that really easy to do, which gives people a lot of ways to consume the information and the content. But there is something really fun about the morale of having people together, right? Or to have a live event. And so we do that also. And giving people ways to participate that don't overwhelm the conversation is really great. So having like questions from the audience that people can submit in advance or live, that kind of stuff is awesome. The reactions are great. Like we'll have virtual watch parties at Atlassian
Oh,
for
cool.
and we'll also have in-person ones in our office locations. So I think there can be a mix of it, but being thoughtful about how much time you're asking someone to show up live um, is really important when it might not
Yeah.
be going well for everyone's schedule.
Totally. So I'm curious to get, because this came up in one of the actual comments. Some of my former colleagues actually at Meta had raised this. And Anita, if you're watching, I see you and I hear you. Um, how do people who maybe aren't a leader today, leading an organization or leading a team, maybe feel victim to just having to say yes to every meeting invite that comes onto their calendar? Do you have any best practices for people to, from an art perspective, be able to say no to maybe their leaders or be able to decline meetings? Like, what is the right way to do that so you can start protecting some of that focus time that you need to actually get the work done?
Yeah, so we have experimented a lot with how people structure their time at Atlassian.
Okay.
One of the things they love most about participating in the experiments is that we give them an excuse for why they can't come to meetings as much for a certain period of time. And we
No,
give them
that's brilliant.
right? So maybe if you have a group, that can be an excuse. But truly, like as a leader, I would certainly think about empowering your team to say no to that and being really explicit, or setting some certain time where you're going to try to reduce the meetings. But for individuals, I think there's a lot of things you can do too. One is ask for goals or context in advance. Make
Mm,
suggestions about how to make meetings better. I think anytime you come to people with solutions or ideas for, hey, this session would be so much more useful if there was like a way for everyone to catch up on this in advance, or if we were able to, do that read in the meeting, or if you had XYZ prepared, a whiteboard, giving ideas of here's what I think would make this um, a good use of all of our time can be really
yeah,
helpful for sure. And then I also think
yeah.
simply like saying what you need to get done and what your top priorities are, and
Mm,
thinking about designing your calendar around the most important work
mm.
is really powerful. I really think a lot about flipping the script on calendars.
Okay.
Usually meetings show up and you're like, okay, that's where I've got to be for all these times. I'm going to try to
Yep.
slot in the things that are most important uh,
Yes.
in between them, right? So I've got
Yes.
this 30-minute block here,
That's
maybe
what
an
I do.
hour here.
Full
Totally. This is what
honesty.
everyone does. And this is also what I did for years and years and years and years.
Yes.
I think my best hack is to instead start my week with, okay, what are the top things for the week? And then each day think about, okay, what is like the one thing that has to happen tomorrow that would be highest impact for my team and for the broader business? And then look at your calendar and design it around that thing. And so if that means some meetings have to go, they have to go. If that means that, if I need to write a strategy page,
Yeah.
I can't be in 12 30-minute meetings. That's not the
Yep.
point of the day. And when you can clearly articulate this thing is really important and adding a lot of value, it makes it a lot easier for people to understand, like, okay, here's where you can and can't spend time right now. And I think also gives them the alternative to say like, oh, maybe this actually isn't the thing I need to do tomorrow either. Or you can, of course, do this farther in advance as well if you have a good sense of what's going to matter on Wednesday. But that's really how I think about, for individuals, structuring your time.
All right, Miley, listen, if you got to do a short form, reels, TikTok, whatever your format is, you might need to do that. I like flipping the script on meetings because that just helped me reframe completely. I think why I feel so stressed at times. Whereas you walk into the day, like if you're leading a team or you're leading a function, hopefully you know what your priorities are and you should know what the most urgent thing is. And I struggle because you're absolutely right. I'm thinking through, okay, well, here's the 5 meetings I have to attend today. How do I get into this deeper thinking and where does it slot in, as opposed to the exact opposite way of thinking of, I know I need this 3 to 4 hour block and I happen to be a morning person and I know that's where I'm going to do my best work. How do I then either shift the calendar or move things and or decline and say that today I can't do this? So I think that's quite frankly brilliant. You said something else, and we're gonna wrap up here in a second. But you said something else that I think is a little. I've been saying this for a while that appears to be controversial, but I'm not sure really should be. So here's the other thing I feel we've over rotated in a work environment perspective is we've so focused again on trying to create human connection in a distributed environment, and or like when we get together in person, whether that's 3 to 4 times a year, and we're really like striving to do all these team building activities and human connection points. And sometimes I think the best thing that we can be doing is what you said before is moving those big rocks together, solving big problems, actually getting the work done. And I'm just curious to get your opinion on this because this is just something that I've been struggling with a lot. I would honestly rather move a lot of those intentional like team building activities and say, I don't need those. What I need is I really like, we are solving this problem. Here's like our top priorities here at Upwork. How can we come together and do some of those moonshot ideas or actually really, come together to collaborate to solve for problems? That is, and I don't know if it's like a personality trait, but like that to me is how I want to spend my time with my colleagues. What is your opinion on that? Like, am I over rotating maybe too much and getting the work done as opposed to some of the team building that needs to take place?
I think that instead of the 30-minute one-on-one every other week,
Yeah.
having longer blocks of time where you're solving meaningful problems and being creative together is much better and brings you together in a better way. One really fun thing we've done around connection is this thing called Chief Vibes Officer. We have a
Okay.
CVO of the week. We studied this at Atlassian. We had about 1,000 people that joined in to test it out. And it's one person in the team for the week is in charge of setting a theme. And the theme can be any sort of question. This week, the question in my team was, if you won the lottery, what are you buying?
Love it.
And the questions are always like somewhat silly or fun like that.
Yeah.
But they really do help you get to know people a lot better. You start to find out what they care about, what silly dreams they have, like
Yep.
who's important to them. And it's a super easy, fast way to have that connection, to get to know each other as people. We do it in Slack in my team, and that's how most of the teams at Atlassian play this game. You might have an icebreaker in a meeting, whatever. But it's a very fun way to show off a little bit more of who you are as a person. And then when we think about the big time investments, we work on solving hard problems together. And so I don't think you're over rotating, but I do think finding those opportunities to show a little bit more of yourself and that maybe you wouldn't have with that wider group is always nice too.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'm sure we probably didn't get to everyone. If anyone still has remaining questions, Molly and I will certainly be checking out the LinkedIn chat. I was trying to stay focused here, not multitask during the session. So feel free to drop in your questions. Molly, I am sure people are going to want to know, how can I get this research, especially so I can go either take it to my leader or take it to my team and start really learning and incorporating some of these best practices. Where can they find you in this research?
Yeah, so certainly follow me on LinkedIn. I post all the things that as they come out there, but you can also check out Atlassian's Work Life blog. We have a lot of content that we publish there as well. And so those will be two good sources to hear what we're up to and to learn more about how to have better meetings.
Yes. Well, to summarize, Molly, I think that you've left us with a couple, drop the mic take. So meetings, guys, are just a tool. Make sure, as with any other tool, we're using them appropriately, making sure that you're setting those goals. I love that one pager idea that you proposed to this group here. How can we begin to practice that and really begin to have that brevity in what we're coming towards? And then again, as we were just talking about, how do we actually move through those rocks together and really energize each other by solving really big problems? I am so happy, Molly, that we have connected. I am a huge champion of your research. Those of you who are listening, please follow Molly on LinkedIn. She is an academic at heart and also doing a lot of the real world applied problem solving. So you're an inspiration to me and the Upwork Research Institute. And we really appreciate having you on today, Molly.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I am so impressed by all of your work and so glad that we got to connect and do this today.
Cool. All right. Those of you, thanks for joining us live. And we look forward to seeing you in the comments. Take care.